Get your filthy hands off that hood, boy. You don't even know what you're looking at. Charles Whitfield grabbed the 12-year-old by his thin shoulder and shoved him backward into a tool cart. The metal clanged loudly. The boy stumbled but did not fall. Ruth, I told you 100 times, I don't pay you to bring your child into my garage. This is a $40 million machine, not a daycare. He kicked a push broom across the polished concrete floor toward the boy's feet. If you want to be useful, sweep. That's about all your kind is good for in here anyway. 12 grown men in matching Navy coveralls laughed. Certified master technicians from 3 countries. Not one of them said a word in defense of the boy. Ruth Carter rushed across the garage, her hands trembling as she pulled her son behind her. Elijah Carter picked up the broom, but his eyes never left the open hood of the cherry-red Ferrari sitting on the lift. The same engine that had defeated every certified Ferrari technician on 3 continents for 14 months. The billionaire owner had spent over $4 million on diagnostics, parts, and labor. Nobody could fix it. Have you ever been judged the moment someone looked at you before you even opened your mouth? Before this story breaks your heart and rebuilds it again, do me one small favor. If you believe talent doesn't care about your zip code, your last name, or the color of your skin, hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel. Now let's rewind. Howard Bennington was 71 years old. He sat in a leather chair in the corner of the garage, watching the cherry-red Ferrari 275 GTB on the hydraulic lift like a father watching a sick child. The Ferrari had been his father's car. James Bennington had bought it brand new in Maranello, Italy, in 1966. He had taught a young Howard to drive in this same car on empty country roads outside Cleveland. 3 years later, James was gone, a heart attack at 54. The Ferrari became a kind of church for Howard. Then his daughter Sarah grew up, and Howard taught her to drive in the same Ferrari. 8 years ago, Sarah had died of breast cancer at 32. The Ferrari was the only place left in the world where Howard could still hear her giggle. 14 months ago, the engine had started to stumble. Just a small hesitation. Most drivers would never have noticed. Howard noticed because he knew this car the way he knew his own hands. The first diagnosis at Whitfield Heritage Motors cost $52,000. The hesitation came back. The second cost $110,000. Over 14 months, Howard took the car to 5 shops in 3 countries, the Ferrari Classic department in Maranello itself, a specialist in Stuttgart, a top vintage restorer in Connecticut. Every expert said the same thing: we cannot find anything wrong. The total bill sat at $4,100,000. The car was still broken. And tonight, Howard had decided he was done. In the corner of the garage, Elijah Carter swept slowly. His mind was on the open hood. He had been listening to Charles, to the 12 technicians, to the engine itself. They had been speaking a language most 12-year-olds did not understand. Fuel pressure variance, carburetor float levels, ignition advance curves. Elijah understood every single word. He had learned that language in a small storage unit garage 2 miles from his apartment. He had learned it from a pair of weathered hands that had once shaken Enzo Ferrari's hand. They had started the engine 10 minutes ago for another diagnostic. And then he heard it. A flutter. A microscopic stumble in the engine's rhythm, so brief that the digital sensors would round it off as normal. The broom in Elijah's hand stopped moving. He knew that sound. "Enough," Howard Bennington said suddenly. "I'm done. I'm donating the car to the Peterson Automotive Museum. I cannot watch it die one diagnosis at a time anymore." His voice cracked. "This car is my father, this car is my daughter, and I am giving up on both of them tonight." He turned toward the door, his shoulders bent. In the corner, Elijah's heart was pounding. His mother's warnings rang in his ears: stay invisible, stay quiet. But Salvator's words rang louder: every machine tells you what is wrong. The only question is whether anyone is humble enough to listen. Elijah set the broom down against the wall. "Mr. Bennington." His voice was young, clear, steady. The whole garage went silent. "I know what is wrong with your car, sir." The silence broke into laughter. Greg Donovan, the lead technician, doubled over. "Kid, that is hilarious. Stick to the broom." Charles Whitfield's face turned purple. "Ruth, control your son right now." Elijah looked at his mother. His eyes were calm. "Mama, I know I can do this. Mr. Salvator taught me." Howard Bennington lifted one hand. The room fell silent. "Let the boy speak." Charles took a step forward. "Howard, you cannot be serious. This is a child. The son of the cleaning woman." Howard's voice cut him off like a blade. Charles, your certifications have cost me $4 million in 14 months. I think I can spare 10 minutes for someone new. He turned to Elijah. What is your name, son? Elijah Carter, sir. And you really think you know what is wrong with my Ferrari? Elijah nodded. Everyone has been listening to what the computers say, sir, but the computers are not hearing what I heard. Your car has been trying to tell you something for 14 months, and I know what it is. Charles saw his entire reputation slipping. Fine, we will arrange a formal evaluation 1 week from today. The boy will have 90 minutes in front of certified witnesses. When he fails, his mother will issue a public apology in writing. He turned to Ruth, his voice dropping to a hiss. And if your son embarrasses my shop, you will never clean another house in this city. Ruth's face went gray, but her son spoke first. I can do this, Mama, I promise. Ruth Carter looked at Charles's smug, pale face. Then she straightened her back. My son does not lie, Mr. Bennington. If Elijah says he knows, then he knows. To understand what was about to happen, you have to go back 5 years. 7-year-old Elijah Carter sat on the curb watching his mother cry. Their old 2003 Chevy Malibu had died. The cheapest repair quote was $850, money she did not have. Mama, can I look at it? She had nothing left to lose. The next morning, Elijah walked 1.5 miles to the public library. He pulled down every repair manual he could reach. He copied every diagram by hand. Then he watched YouTube videos until his eyes burned. On the 8th day, he found it. A cracked coolant hose, a $6 part. He patched it with rubber and a hose clamp. The Chevy started on the first try. Across the parking lot, an old man had been watching from a small storage unit garage. Salvatore Romano, white hair, weathered hands. Salvatore had spent 32 years as a master technician at the Ferrari factory in Maranello. He had once shaken Enzo Ferrari's hand at a Christmas party in 1979. He crossed the parking lot slowly. You fixed that yourself? Yes, sir. No professional tools, YouTube and library books. Do you know what a Ferrari is? Elijah's eyes lit up. The 250 GTO is the most beautiful car ever made. Only 36 were ever built. The engine is a Colombo V12. Salvatore started to laugh for the first time in months. Come with me, boy. The little garage was a museum. In the center sat a partially disassembled V12 engine. I have trained over 100 mechanics in my career, but I have never met a 7-year-old who could fix a coolant hose from YouTube videos. Your hands are small. That is not a weakness. That is a gift. Would you like to learn how a real engine breathes? Elijah's answer came without hesitation. Yes, sir, more than anything. For 5 years, every weekend, Elijah disappeared into Salvatore's garage. Salvatore taught him how to hear what other men could not hear. The Germans build perfect machines. The Japanese build reliable machines. But the Italians, we build machines with souls. And he made Elijah repeat one sentence until it was carved into his bones. Every machine tells you what is wrong. The only question is whether you are humble enough to listen. 7 days later, Elijah walked into Whitfield Heritage Motors wearing his Sunday church clothes. The garage had been transformed into a courtroom. The 12 Whitfield technicians filled the front row, smirking, 6 automotive journalists with notepads. Diane Larkin had arrived representing Ferrari Classic North America. Howard Bennington sat alone in the back. Ruth Carter clutched her purse with white knuckles. Charles Whitfield stood before the room. Before we begin, a few simple questions. What is the precise bore and stroke of the Colombo V12 in a 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB? Elijah did not hesitate. 77 millimeters by 58.8 millimeters, total displacement of 3,285 cubic centimeters. Cylinder head bolt torque. First pass 25 foot-pounds. Second pass 50. Third pass 65. Spiral pattern from center outward, sir. Silence. Charles fired more questions. Elijah answered every single one perfectly from memory. Diane Larkin cleared her throat. Mr. Whitfield, let him examine the vehicle. Fine, the clock starts now. Before Elijah could take a step, the side door opened. An old man entered slowly, leaning on a wooden cane. Diane Larkin rose from her chair so fast it nearly tipped over. Salvatore Romano, from the original Maranello factory team. Whispers exploded around the room. Salvatore walked to Elijah and placed one weathered hand on the boy's shoulder. Elijah Carter is the most gifted diagnostician I have ever taught. If this boy says he knows what is wrong with this car, then he knows. I am here only to witness. Elijah approached the Ferrari. He did not pick up any tools. He walked slowly around the entire car. Looking, listening, he closed his eyes and breathed slowly. Greg Donovan laughed loudly. "What is he doing, communicating telepathically?" Elijah opened his eyes. "I am listening, sir. It is something you forgot how to do a very long time ago." The laughter died instantly. "Please start the engine." The V12 roared to life. Elijah closed his eyes, 10 seconds, 20, 30, then his eyes snapped open. "There. Did anyone else hear that?" "No, sir. It sounds almost perfect. There is a difference." He turned to the clock. "I need an analog fuel pressure gauge, the kind from the 1960s. Not a digital display." Greg crossed his arms. "We have a $60,000 diagnostic computer system, and this kid wants antique equipment. Your $60,000 computer has been wrong for 14 months, sir." 15 minutes later, the gauge was located. Elijah connected it with careful, precise hands. "Start the engine again." The V12 roared. The needle held steady. 4.5 psi, 5 minutes steady, 10 minutes steady. Greg smirked. "Looks like everything is normal." Elijah raised one finger. "Wait!" At minute 19, the needle dipped, a movement so small that most eyes missed it entirely. "There. A drop of 0.4 psi for 2 seconds. Charles laughed. "That is nothing." Elijah turned to face him. "In a modern fuel-injected engine, you would be correct, sir. The computer compensates automatically. But this is not a modern engine. This is a 1966 carbureted system. No computer. No automatic compensation. That 0.4 psi drop creates a momentary lean condition. Not enough to trigger any warning, but more than enough for the engine to stumble." Elijah dropped to the floor and slid under the Ferrari. He traced the original 1966 fuel line with his fingertips. His hand stopped at one specific section near the exhaust manifold. He examined it. It looked perfect. Elijah slid out. "This section of fuel line is original, from 1966. 58 years old, it is not broken, sir. It is tired, there is a difference." He walked over to Diane Larkin. "This fuel line runs within 2 inches of the exhaust manifold, 58 years of heat cycles. The rubber expands when hot, it contracts when cold. The outside still looks perfect, but the inside has degraded. Microscopic cracks. When the engine heats up, the inner rubber expands. The inner diameter narrows by a fraction of a millimeter, not enough to block fuel flow, but enough to reduce pressure by 0.4 psi for a few seconds. Then everything returns to normal. You test it. It passes. The problem disappears until conditions line up wrong again." Salvatore Romano rose slowly. "I have seen this twice in my entire career. You can only find this problem by understanding how engines speak to those who know how to listen." Robert Hayes leaned forward. "How do you prove it?" "I can prove it right now, sir." Elijah asked for a length of modern fuel-rated rubber hose. "I want to bypass this section with a temporary line. If I am right, the pressure fluctuation will stop completely." Howard Bennington stood up. "Let the boy proceed." 8 minutes later, the bypass was complete. Greg Donovan walked over to examine the work. "This is actually really good work," he admitted quietly. "Please start the engine." The V12 roared. The needle held steady. 20 minutes steady, 30 minutes, not a single fluctuation. "Now I am going to remove the bypass and reconnect the original line." 3 minutes later, the original 1966 fuel line was back in place. They waited. At 23 minutes, the needle dipped. At 27 minutes, the engine stumbled. The silence was absolute. Elijah turned to face the audience. "The repair requires a $60 fuel line and about 30 minutes of labor, sir. You spent $4,100,000 looking for a problem that was hiding in 60 cents worth of degraded rubber. The line was not broken. It was just very old. It was asking for help. And nobody was humble enough to listen." Diane Larkin rose to her feet. "In 21 years at Ferrari Classic North America, I have never witnessed a diagnosis this elegant." In the back row, Salvatore Romano wiped tears from his weathered cheeks. Howard Bennington stood up. "Elijah, I need to drive this car." "Mr. Bennington, may I ride with you, sir?" "He rides with me." Howard slid into the driver's seat. The V12 sang to life. They pulled out into the late afternoon sunlight. Every road that had betrayed him before, every hill where the engine had stumbled. The Ferrari climbed effortlessly. It did not stumble once. At a red light near the top of a hill in Bel Air, Howard's hands began to shake. "My father taught me to drive in this car. Summer of 1969. He died 3 years later. Then my daughter, Sarah. Cancer took her 8 years ago. When this car started failing, it felt like losing them both all over again." Tears rolled down the 71-year-old billionaire's cheeks. "The car was not failing you, Mr. Bennington," Elijah said gently. "It was just tired, and it needed somebody who was willing to listen to it." Howard finally turned to look at him. "You gave them back to me, son, both of them." 35 minutes later, they returned. Howard was smiling, a real smile. Charles Whitfield's face went pale. 35 minutes, every road that broke this car before, not a single problem. The boy was right. The garage erupted. Elijah's mother rushed forward and wrapped him in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Diane Larkin raised her hand. "Mr. Carter, Ferrari Classic North America offers you a full scholarship to any technical high school of your choice. Summer internships at our Marinello facility. And when you are old enough, a guaranteed apprenticeship in our Heritage Restoration Division." Howard Bennington stepped forward. "Elijah, I am establishing an educational trust in your name. Full funding through your doctorate level." He turned to Ruth. "Mrs. Carter, I would like to offer you a position as the household manager at my estate, a salary that means you will never work 2 jobs again." Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. "And finally, Mr. Romano, I am personally funding the complete restoration of your storage unit garage into a real training school. One condition: Elijah helps you teach." The old Italian man looked at his student. "Deal." Charles Whitfield watched his entire world collapse. Within 2 weeks, Ferrari Classic issued a formal complaint. A class action lawsuit was filed by 12 former clients. 21 days later, Charles Whitfield III stepped down to pursue other opportunities. 1 year later, a new sign hangs above a beautifully restored garage in South Los Angeles, the Romano Carter School of Automotive Arts. Elijah Carter, now 13, stands before 12 students. On the wall behind him hangs a framed photograph of a cherry-red Ferrari 275 GTB. Beside it, painted in elegant script, the words that changed everything. "Every machine tells you what is wrong. The only question is whether you are humble enough to listen. So here is what I want to leave you with." Charles Whitfield thought he was handing Elijah a broom to teach him his place. What he actually handed him was a stage. 90 minutes later, that boy did not just fix a $40 million Ferrari. He exposed 14 months of expensive incompetence. And he reminded an entire industry that talent does not check your zip code, your last name, or the color of your skin before it shows up. Think about the Elijahs around you right now. How many times have we walked past brilliance because it was wearing the wrong clothes? If this story moved you tonight, do me one final favor. Smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. And drop a comment below telling me about an Elijah in your own life. The quiet one, the one with the small hands, the one who hears what nobody else hears. Because the world is full of Elijahs waiting to be heard. And the only question that matters is whether we are humble enough to listen when they finally speak. See you in the next story.